So this is the first webinar of a series of webinars that Accord project is doing. This webinar is, the topic is semantic and rule formalization process, and it's part of Accord project on digital building permits and compliance check. So our agenda for today, I will welcome you as I'm doing now. Then we will have a brief project overview. Then also an overview of the first training package that we sent to you. It's a series of 5 videos with training material on what Accord partners have developed so far. Then the main part of this webinar is an interactive session. So we are very happy to receive questions from your side, comments to enrich the conversation about semantics and rule formalization, and to feed us and the project partners with your suggestions and opinions, but also to clarify things that you might not understand. So this is the main part of our webinar. And then we will close, have reflections and a closure. So welcome everybody. Before we start, please, if you have any questions already, we have a question and answer box on the top of your Teams. So if you have any questions now or during the webinar, just add the questions there and we will answer them in the interactive session. Then I will introduce the speaker. So my name is Larissa De Rosso. I'm project officer at the Architects Council of Europe, and I will moderate the session today. Then we'll be followed by Rita Lavikka. She is a researcher team leader at VTT and also the project coordinator of Accord. She will make an overview of Accord. And then we have Edlira Vakaj, associate professor at Birmingham City University, also Accord partner. Then Thomas Beach, a reader in construction informatics at Cardiff University, also Accord partner. Gonçal Costa, associate professor at La Salle, also Accord partner. Maxime Lefrançois, associate professor at École des Mines and Saint-Étienne, Accord partner as well. And Ian Saar, chief evangelist at Future Insight and Accord partner. So this will be our speaker today, and now I will give the floor to Rita for a brief overview of the project. Rita.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I am Rita Lavikka, a research team leader at VTT Technical Research Center of Finland, and I have the pleasure of coordinating Accord Horizon Europe project that will still run for 1 year. It's about digitalizing building permitting and automating code compliance checking. Next. Yes, and our vision has been that both the building permit applicants and the building permit authorities would have a transparent and resource-efficient building permit process. In practice, this means that we have to have online cloud-based building permitting system, which both parties can connect to and get all the related relevant data regarding the building permit application and do the compliance checking through that system. And all this code compliance checking happens in the background. Next one. So what are the benefits? So by automating the code compliance checking, you can check early in the design process whether your design is code compliant. You get more improved collaboration between the stakeholders because all the stakeholders have the same overview of the data and what's happening regarding the proposal. You get more efficient and transparent process because everyone can access the same data, and it gets more resource efficient in that way that it saves your time and resources. Data integration, if you can integrate, for example, building information modeling data with geospatial information, you can better plan your surroundings and all the environments, so better city planning. You can also mitigate risks early on in the design phase and make sure that you don't get problems during the construction phase. And of course, when you have your design in a structured format, you can do various kinds of analyses, for example, related to energy performance or CO2 emissions, etc. Next. So where we are at the moment. So this is a simple transformation pathway, and most of the European countries are now on the second step, where they have this kind of a cloud-based online building permitting system, which allows the submission of your design in a PDF format. And you can do the manual review of that design. But what Accord project wants to advance is that we would have more European countries utilizing IFC as the submission format, which allows you to do this then kind of semi-automated code compliance checking. And there are some countries showing the way. And in the future, we expect that BIM and GIS information and other related information services will be integrated, and we will have more automated compliance checking. Of course, humans will always take the kind of responsibility for it. So let's not forget humans there. And we will have machine interpretable regulations. Next. And our whole project has been based on the idea of combining cloud-based systems, building permitting systems with code compliance checking systems. And they are integrated through open APIs and semantic models. And this webinar is all about that. Next one. So what is our scope? Is that we are trying to support both parties, so building permit applicants, supporting them with a starter package, which helps you to know how to start digital building permitting, how to model your design in a structured format so that it supports code compliance checking. Please click, you can click more. Then we have created a rule formalization tool for building permit authorities and other designers and stakeholders that can then formulate these machine interpretable regulations. We are also experimenting with newest technologies like natural language processing to ensure that we get all the efficiency from the technologies. And we are developing several software components that we will finally validate and demonstrate in 9 real-life building projects. Next one. Here's an overview. So various demonstrations will take place starting actually quite soon. Continuing from January on, we have selected 13 machine executable regulations. They vary from design codes to various urban regulations and building acts and decrees. Various real-life projects from residential to non-residential, new building and renovation, and IFC and CityGML will be the basic data exchange standards that we will be using. But this is a short overview of Accord, and now I will give the floor to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. So that was an overview of Accord. So now we will have an overview of the training pack. So the first training pack that Accord partners have developed. So we have a video as a training pack, and it was 5 videos as it is in the list. The first one was Accord technical review of existing ontologies, standards and data models for the architectural and construction industry. Then Accord digitalization methodology for building permits and compliance checking. Then the AEC 3PO, architecture, engineering, construction compliance checking and permitting ontology model. The Accord RFT tool, AI-powered rule formalization tool, and then the Accord semantic framework. So now we will have a very brief overview about all these training materials, and then we will open the floor for questions. So the first one, Maxime, could you give us a brief overview?
Sure. So in the project Accord, this technical review of existing standards was the topic of a task in work package 2. So task 2.1, which started together with the project. One postdoc researcher was involved heavily, well, full-time almost on this task. Tamer Mesharner is the one that is talking in this video. And the topic here is to review the existing standards, ontologies, etc., that can be used for compliance checking or to model the domain or to potentially like define or identify the potential alignments or different quality criteria for those standards and ontologies to decide which one of them we want to reuse in the subsequent tasks. And so the work was done already 1.5 years ago. So this is a domain that is evolving very fast, and potentially more things could be interesting to add to this technical review today. But at least it provides a good overall view of the current state of the domain at the moment.
Thank you, Maxime. Then we move to the methodology. Tom?
Hi, yes, so my name's Tom Beach. So I've been responsible for developing the Accord digitization methodology. And one of the things we've been considering throughout this, and this is discussed in the training video, is that we've kind of got two, possibly three approaches that we consider. We have a manual approach, an automated approach using AI, which Edlira will speak about a little bit later. And then we're also looking at a hybrid approach, which is really looking how we can bring the two together to let AI do the easy bits of the automated approach while still giving humans control to really dig deep into the difficult regulations. The approach is underpinned by the use of RAISE, which has been championed by, as I say, Nick Nisbet and myself in our work in the UK, and I can see Nick is here with us today, on UK regulations, but has been used in many other situations across Europe and the world as well. So in this video, I go into exactly how the methodology works, how we apply RAISE, how we make this semantic, and also give a little bit of insight into how we actually can then move on to have something that's AI enabled.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Then we move on to the AI RFT. Edlira, please.
Good morning, everyone. As part of the Accord tool, as Thomas mentioned, we aim to automate, or at least automate the interpretation of regulations and documents. And in the methodology, we have those three directions. For the automated approach, we have been using natural language processing and large language models in order to conduct that tasks. But before I mention that, we worked on developing the ontology, which has supported the automatic approach, but also the rule formalization tool that we have developed within Accord. So it really worked as a semantic model to structure the content, and then it was used in both approaches. It was used in order to develop the tool where we can have documents and regulations presented in a structured and giving some semantics and linking to other link building data and linking to other standards that were identified in the first task that Maxime mentioned. And then the ontology was further used in order to support also the AI part. For the AI part, one approach was more traditional, where we were trying to convert the sentences and the paragraphs in a regulation to a knowledge graph annotated with some concepts from the ontology. And as an output of that is not only this tool that helps you convert a sentence to a graph in the compliance context, but also there is an open data set that other people from the community, IT or non-IT community, from the AC community can make use of it. And the other approach, which was more automated, was when we were using large language models in order to take a full document and then to give as an output a structured document where all the components of the methodology, like the race approach, the ontology, and all that was integrated. That is all that comes also with that challenge, if we can trust that, and that's why we're always cautious and saying that that is something that needs to be approved by experts. And we have done some assessments in that regard, but that still remains a large language model generated output, and the experiments and the confidence of the experiment is presented in the video and in also many repositories, the GitHub repositories where the code is public. But we can say more about that in the interaction sections. And I think I have covered both the ontology and the AI, Larissa. Thank you.
Yes, and the next one. Okay, thank you, Edlira. I just saw on the chat box, apparently some people, they cannot have access to the Q&A session. That's not a problem. If you don't have access, just add your questions to the chat box. We will cover the questions there as well. So then I ask Tom again to give a brief overview on the semantic framework.
Hi everyone, hello again. So the semantic framework, which I describe in this video, is the starting point of how we move from formalizing and making regulations executable to actually using them to do compliance checking. So given the main principle of Accord is we have our digitized regulations available in a semantic form. So we make them available as a knowledge graph, which incorporates the document structure, the raise, and other elements. And how do we then use that to actually make a system that can execute these regulations? And this is the starting point. So I think we cover later things in later webinars, more detail of this, but this is kind of the finishing point. This is our outline structure for saying we've got all these regulations, they're now formalized and digitized. How do we make them executable? How do we execute them in the cloud to actually perform the actual compliance checking, whether the kind of the pre-checking we've discussed previously, or actually the actual decision making and the definitive checking of buildings for the purposes of permitting.
Thank you, Tom. So this was the brief overview of all training materials. Now we will start the interactive session. And as I announced, of course, we want to hear from you. If you have any doubts about the training material, if you would like to add something to what Accord is developing, if you have any comments. As I said, we received already some questions in the chat box from Cedric. I'm not sure, Cedric, would you like to do the questions yourself?
Well, sure.
Okay.
Yes. So my first question, you do a NLP translation to raise, if I understand correctly. But in our case, so I work on Firebim, which is also a European project doing automatic compliance checks. But for example, height is defined differently for a wall and a building. And using raise, this can become very ambiguous. So we force directly linking to URIs. So how do you handle this ambiguity?
You want me to field that one, Edlira?
I think Nick has his hands up. I'm not sure if he wants to answer the question or he has an answer.
I'll have a go. I think one of the key things about raise is that it identifies the context by the applicabilities that stack up before you get to a requirement. you know whether you're talking about a building or whether you're talking about a wall. And so it's the context that then tells you that it's a different kind of measurement. And I think that's really important. We're not just taking the individual requirements in abstract. So in general, the outcome from RAISE is to deduce what the context of any particular requirement is, or any particular exception is. So I think we handle that quite well. Tom, do you want to add anything? Because I didn't mean to.
I'll just chip in. I'll just chip in there. And so, so Nick is exactly right. The responsibility of the NLP element is to really identify the terms being used and the logical relationships between those terms, so that we know that the particular paragraph is talking about a door, or doors, and we know that in that paragraph there is some sort of decision, let's say about height, to use that example. So we know what we mean by a height and a door. And then the way we kind of put that together is we use, and there's nothing on this in the training material, actually, I think this is to come later, but it's quite good to discuss it. We use the Building Smart Data Dictionary here, in that we have the knowledge of what a door or a window, whatever the object or the thing that we're talking about means, and then we have the knowledge of the term that's related to it. I mean, because when we're talking about getting down to the concrete level in IFC, how a height is represented for an IFC door could be different to how a height is represented for another type of thing. It might be in a different property set name, it might even have a different property name, etc. I think height is represented reasonably uniformly, but when you're dealing with more kind of exotic terms, how they're represented in IFC is different. And the other level of complexity that we use kind of BSDD to untangle is, if the model you're looking at is IFC 2x3, it might be represented differently to if you're IFC 4 or IFC 4.3. So we don't try and deal with that as part of the NLP stage. We deal with that as part of the kind of the resolution of the terms in BSDD. Edlira's got her hand up as well, so I'll let her speak, because she's the one who's been doing the AI stuff, not me.
Yeah. So what Thomas explained, it's let's say the part of the traditional NLP, where we have sort of been annotating different sentences, and I'll paste a link in the chat. For the LLM part, we have manually created some parts of the regulation with all the structure that how we want the document to be interpreted. It's a YAML, a format where tags from the ontology have been used, tags from BSDD, the race structuring, so the ideal versions of a structured document, and those samples have been used to refine, or in some cases, few-shot learning for the large language model. There have been a number of experiments, always using the latest LLM and refining few-shot learning approaches until and there are options that can be used. So what Thomas explained, traditional NLP, the tagging we did and all that, for LLMs, we prepared some good samples that we are teaching the LLM.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Makes sense. We are doing very similar work, so we were a bit worried about losing well, some of those important details, but it looks like it's handled very well. Can I also ask my second question, or?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so one thing about rules that are written is that they can be very ambiguous and very open to interpretation. And my question is, if you use NLP and LLMs, how do you deal with this ambiguity?
I don't think we have an assessment to say that yes, the ambiguity has been resolved. The way we have assessed the output of the LLM is, one approach has been via the expert. So the expert has gone through the output and has confirmed the output. And this is also part of the process in the rule formalization tool. So before, let's say, the regulation is considered fully interpreted, there is a stage that the experts need to double check the output of the LLM and confirm that interpretation. So I'm not sure if I'm correct to say that still the human will need to decide about the ambiguity, or if that has not been disambiguated for the large language model. There are also some other metrics that we have used, but those are computer science related. I don't think they fix the problem that you are talking about, but I don't know if someone else has another answer.
I would just add that ambiguity isn't really just a problem when doing it automatically. It is also an issue doing a manual approach, and often it's because terms are not defined. So I know there's a case in the UK accessibility regulations when you're looking at lobbies, and it says lobbies should comply with a diagram, but the diagram only shows you how they should comply if the lobby has 2 doors. It gives you no inkling about how it should comply if you have 3 doors, and it's left to human judgment to kind of try and scale that 2-door solution to a 3 or 4 or 5-door solution, or phrases in there that say something like doors must be suitably wide. Well, what does suitably mean? They're not defined, and those are generally issues in the text, and that's why part of our process, both for the manual approach and for the automated approach, is to keep the human in the loop. So we have to have. We're not at all proposing a system where we let NLP run over a regulation, it produce output, and then that's it. There's always has to be human validation. And it's the same in automatic, in manual digitization of the documents. You need at least 2 people to kind of look at it. And in the past, that's what we've done in the past, and that's what we're doing in this project as well, is we're really focusing in on keeping the human in the loop. And there's always some things that you're never going to be answered automatically, because you need maybe it's because actually the solution is like, hang on, I just can't come up with an answer for that because the document doesn't define how I come up with an answer, or it only defines it in certain cases, which means you could automatically judge it in certain cases. In other cases, you need the human to come in, or you need to go back to the document and redraft it to actually incorporate more information on those cases that are not specified.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think Alex would like to add. Alex, please.
Yeah, there should be camera now. Right, thanks for presenting all of this. I was wondering, do you have any formalized methods on how humans could evaluate those rules? For example, if you structure regulations as YAML, I can imagine that the experts that normally execute those rules are maybe unable to read those or to totally understand the implications of the structure of the regulation. So how do you assess those?
So
go on, Edlira.
Yeah, so practically in the user interface of the expert, they will see the YAML generated. So if we are talking about the automated approach, because we also have the other approach that it's totally done with some tools from the expert. But if we are talking about the automatic generation, the expert will be presented with the YAML version of the regulation that has been generated. They can edit the YAML file itself, or they can approve it as it is. But that is the stage where they have a say, and they also can change some sort of interpretation or change the structure of the generated YAML version of the regulation.
And I think that's very much it. And what Edlira said is we're not at all. That's why we've kind of developed a tool to let people visualize some of this. It's in one of the pieces of training materials as well. Someone wouldn't view it in YAML. Someone would view it via a user interface. Certainly a regulation expert would view it via a user interface. And we can convert the YAML files back into kind of standard HTML that can be viewed in a web browser to allow visualization. And the other thing is there are some simple rules that we can run, and we've experimented them to check whether documents are valid. So we can always check simple things like if you've not got certain raised tags right, like for example, you could have missing data. So if you kind of put a raised tag in but not defined its meaning, we can identify that. We can also identify things where if you've put a raised tag in but haven't actually set any applicabilities and things, which is wrong in most cases, not all, but most. We can identify things like that. But at the moment we don't have a formalized automatic way to go, this document is correct as per the original document. Our plan still is in our demonstration. Our demonstration hasn't started yet. I think it's starting in the new year. Will be to look at actually how these things are working in reality and how these things would be working when automated. And yeah, that's our kind of approach at the moment.
All right. So do you think that that by just looking at the rules through whatever interface you have or through the original YAML, that you can ensure that that the expert actually understands all the implications of how the rule was digitized, especially if you're in this linked building data domain or linked data domain with all the reasoning and the open world assumptions and so on? That, like, is this enough to ensure that the rule is correct? We're also struggling with this.
I mean, openly and frankly, as I said, just viewing them and running some automated rules will catch a lot of cases of things being wrong, but it's not going to catch everything. And this is one of the reasons why, as I said, as part of the project, we have a demonstration phase to go through and make sure everything is working as expected, because there is a lot of complexity in some of the regulations that we're considering and interacting things. So I think there always will be a need for human validation on this digitization process, especially when you consider the weight and the importance of some of the decisions when you're referring to things perhaps like fire safety and stuff like that. Is there would need to be for human validation, and probably I would say this is not something that's within the scope of Accord, but this is something perhaps that's wider. Is there's almost a need to almost employ kind of test case based, exactly as you would in software development. You produce some sample models that you know certain regulations should pass and fail on, and then you can run test cases against them. But there's always going to be this process, certainly right now, of manual checking. And it may be when the actual automated checking field matures some more, we can then move into looking at automated validation of the digitization. And that will be something that's really interesting, but it's just not where we are at the moment. Nick Nisbet's got his hand up as well.
Yes, just to say, it's not part of the Accord work, but I have generated test cases from the RAISE markup, so that you can generate the queries that are going to do the testing. You can also generate all possible test cases and run them. And since sorry, the building works going anyway. So yeah, automatic testing has been demonstrated.
Thank you, Nick. Cedric, would you like to add?
Yes. So Alex is working on the same projects as also Firebim. So sorry for taking over kind of the Accord webinar. But in our internal tests, so we are also looking at automatic testing on what should pass, fail, but also to keep the fire experts involved in the rule checking. An intermediate step is made to mermaid diagrams. So that's kind of code-based flowcharts. So they can visually look at the rule and the digitization part, and they can kind of fix a flowchart instead of having to look at code.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, Edlira, would you like to
I think
add?
maybe this falls to upcoming webinars from our project. I think this falls into the checking part, whether this webinar is really about the interpretation and how do we semantize and structure the regulation itself. But I know that there are other webinars coming where the focus will be on the checking and the building compliance rule language that Thomas has developed within the project and how that will be used for checking.
Correct.
So hopefully some clarity will come for the
Edlira.
checking part. For the bit of the interpretation that Alex was commenting, I think Alex linked to the point of the link building data part. I think one useful part, at least in the ontology, is that we keep track of the original regulation and the expert is presented and there is some space even visually to compare between what was the original and how the regulation was originally formulated and what is the interpretation, and that makes it easier to make a comparison. There are also other metrics that can help the expert in their decision. But again, with AI, the accuracy can never be 100% thing. But there are also metrics that assess if at least the structure of the generated interpretation YAML file is the same, because it's represented as a graph and we do some similarities in terms of structure. But what we haven't managed to properly achieve is to assess then the semantics of the sentences within the nodes of the knowledge graph, if that interpretation is 100% apart from the expert eye.
Okay, thank you for that. So now I will move, and just to let you know, I will give more information about the next webinar at the end of this webinar. So Dimitrios, I saw you have 2 questions. Would you like to ask them?
Yes, hi, hello, thank you. So the first question is, again, I didn't know that today it was more oriented to the semantics. My question is about the rules that are generated after the enrichment of the documents, and whether those rules are, when transformed into rules, are vendor agnostic, meaning after you export in a certain way the IFC model, if those rules can be applied whether you're exporting from one vendor or another vendor, and has to do effectively with the mapping when exported to the IFC.
That might be one for me to field. Obviously, given its status as an open, as the only really open standard, obviously IFC is our focus, and we're not looking at any other things at the moment. And generally, our philosophy when mapping things to IFC is, as I said earlier, we use BSDD, which would enable us to conceptually map to different IFC versions. Just for the sake of managing the amount of work in the project, we have decided to go for IFC 4 as the main format for our BIM models. But with BSDD, we could easily map to IFC 2x3 or IFC 4F43 or whatever we needed. We try and make use of specific, the inbuilt IFC property sets where at all possible. And while we haven't actually finished this element yet, the strategy for other property sets is to define kind of a custom property set as based on what's missing. So when we've got terms that we need to look up from the IFC and there's no standardized property set, we're defining kind of our own custom property set for them. Because I'm well aware that different vendors, so like Revit and say something from Bentley Systems, spit things out in their own custom property sets each. So we're not going to align to one of them at the moment. We're specifying our own property sets when we need to. But above and beyond that, most of the data that we're looking at would be where there is suitable property sets in the IFC to be used. We would be using those property sets.
Thank you, Thomas. That clearly defines that we are checking the properties. Is the tool also targeted with respect to the geometry of the model? Meaning, does it check whether the distance between the exterior walls and the fence that is on the premises of the IFC site is such and such?
So we're getting now, and I'm quite happy to answer the question, but this is going into the realm of what we're going to be covering in our next webinar. So we've kind of got a hierarchy of what we can check, if that makes sense. So the very simplest checks are ones that are just looking at property in the IFC.
Sorry, there is someone with the microphone on.
Okay, there we go. I think they muted themselves. Okay. So we've got this kind of hierarchy of checks. So the very simplest check is the ones that are just retrieving things from the IFC model, and that's kind of what I described. We have other checks that are using kind of formulas or simple kind of rules that we define, and we've developed kind of a domain-specific language to kind of document them. But then when you get into really complex tasks, we make use of what we call microservices. So this is where certain checks, you have to implement some element of it in a specialized piece of software. And so we then essentially use our cloud system to call those microservices to do the work for us. So for example, this is mapping a check to, say, other project partners, let's say a rule set that exists in Celebri, or we're also working with Future Insight, and they have voxel-based checks in their system. It might map to a voxel check in the Future Insights platform, just to name but a few. So there's kind of this strategy of, if it's in the IFC, we'll use it. If we can compute it from the IFC via some rule that we define semantically, we can do that. But then there will become cases as we get into things like really complex geometry, sort of like saying, well, how far from the exit of the building am I in any given place in the building? That's quite a complex geometric check. And so we would leverage on a piece of supporting software then that would execute a rule. And then the final element that we don't deal with is cases where we need a human to kind of give a particular answer for this. Now, I notice Jaan's got his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think you mostly summarized it, but the Awkward toolset or the Awkward project as such is not delivering a complete, solution for doing permit checking. But as you mentioned, we have software providers like I'm representing Future Insight. We have clearly BIM. There's Solibri is also a partner in Awkward. They also do these IFC-based checking. So if you're looking for solutions that can do, give them a model and do some geometric checks, also the property and data content checks, then those solutions are already there.
Okay, thank you very much. I first would like to highlight the chat box. There is good links and information there if you want to access. But now I would like to move for a quick interaction session in Slido. And then we are heading to the end of our webinar. So this is just few questions on Slido. So I would invite you to either scan the QR code in your mobile or access slido.com, and then you need to add the code accord1 in the hashtag. Once you have done that, you will be able to answer the questions. The simple questions is yes or no. It's just to finalize the webinar. So I will already push the first question. So have you ever used semantic web technologies and or AI for automatic compliance checking? We have, yeah, I can see that people are active on the poll. So I will wait a few seconds to receive the answers. And yeah, okay. Okay, interesting. Yeah, the majority no, 41% yes. And it's changing, okay. Okay. So, yes, okay. So I think we are all now a bit more familiar with Slido tool. I think I will move to the next question. Is there any other topic you would like to learn about? So this is, you can type a topic, this is, and it will show in the screen, any topic that you, of course, in the domain of digital building permit that you miss in the training materials. What would you like to learn about? And just a reminder, we have 2 more webinars and we will still develop new training materials for these webinars. So there are still things to come for 2025. So machine learning deeply. Okay. GeoB integrations. Okay. Standards. Okay. Previous human interpretation, I guess. NLP to correct semantics, machine readable formats. Okay. LLM training. IR definition and upset. Okay, more material on AEC3PO. Okay. Integration with Brick LLM, IFC plus non-IFC to graphs. Okay. Okay, interesting. Implementation. Yes, so about implementation, this will be the topic for our last webinar. We will get there. Okay, implementation. Yeah, good. So let's move on to the third question. So is there any improvement to be made in the training materials? Do you see if anything that we can improve? No, thank you very much. Yes, it's still okay. Great. That's great answer. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. If you have any suggestions, please add to the chat box. We will go through it certainly. Thank you very much for that. Now I will go to the next question. Will you use this training material in the future? Do you think this is useful? Do you think you go back to it to check? Or perhaps use, if you are a teacher or if you are a researcher, would you use it? Maybe yes, well, but that's great. That's really great. Majority of yes. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. This was our questions for you. So I will finish the webinar now. Before that, I will please give information about the webinars, the next webinars. Please save the date. So the second webinar will be on the 12th March 2025, the same hour, 11 to 12 Central European Time. And in this webinar, we will focus on digital building permit tools and methodologies for municipalities and professionals. So we will tackle more the user side rather than the technical side as we tackle in this webinar. And then the final webinar will be in May, 14 May, again at 11 o'clock Central European Time. And then this webinar, we will focus more on the Accord use cases. So this will be already the final month of Accord project, and we will be able to give you more information about how was the work on our pilots. So this webinar will focus on that. And just as a reminder, in the same way as we did for this webinar, for these two webinars, we will produce specific training materials that we will send to the registers, these training materials, so you can have a look first, understand what we are doing, and then bring to the webinar the questions, and we can have a nice discussion on the topic. I can see more questions coming in the chat box. Yeah, I'm afraid I will answer these questions by email. I'm quite conscious about the time, it's 12:10. So I really would like to thank you all the participants. Thank you, the speakers. It was a very productive discussion, I guess. This is not the end. There will be more, so join us on the next ones, and thank you very much.